Please be seated. The record will show the presence of the jury, the defendant, and counsel. You may continue.
Thank you, Honor. Ms. LaViolette, did you review an email that was written October 3rd of 2007?
I bet I did.
Okay. Did you review an email that had to do with Mr. Alexander owing somebody money?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And that was besides the email that we've already discussed with Ms. Hughes, right?
Excuse me?
This was in addition to the email that we've already discussed regarding the money that he owed to Ms. Hughes.
Yes, it is.
Okay. All right. I want to talk to you about a journal entry on October 6th of 2007. It's been marked as 576. You ready?
Yes.
Okay. So on October 6th, this is a journal entry from Miss Arias, right, into her own journal?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And what is it, the subject matter of this journal entry?
She's, the subject matter is Deanna Reed and Travis's, Mr. Alexander's impression that she's become like Deanna Reed.
Okay, I'm sorry, let me stop you there. So maybe let's back up a second.
Okay.
Based on your review of this case, do you know who Deanna Reed is?
Deanna Reed was the woman who Mr. Alexander was in love with and had a relationship with for, I believe, 7 years.
Okay. And was he still in contact with her while he was in a relationship with Miss Arias?
Yes, he was.
And was he still in contact with her when he was in a relationship with Miss Andrews?
Yes, he was.
And was he still in contact with her when these other women that you mentioned with regard to the text messages and emails that you reviewed, was he still in contact with Miss Reed as well?
Yes, he was.
All right. And based on your conversations with Miss Arias, what did she believe about Miss Reed as far as how Miss Reed treated Mr. Alexander?
Overruled. You may answer.
Miss Arias believed that Deanna Reed was a little crazy and maybe, well, that she was crazy and jealous.
All right. And did Mr. Alexander often have Miss Arias not come into the home or drop him off around a corner to avoid seeing Miss Reed?
Overruled. You may answer yes or no.
Yes.
All right. And is this information, did Miss Arias ever have any substantial conversations with Miss Reed?
Not that I'm aware of.
So where did this information come from?
From Mr. Alexander.
All right. And so back to this October 6th journal entry, you said that Mr. Alexander seems to be comparing Miss Arias to Miss Reed?
Yes.
And this is what Jodi is writing in her journal. Is that right?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Does she explain why Mr. Alexander feels that way?
She is talking.
Sustained.
Is that how and why does she explain Mr. Alexander feeling this way?
Overruled.
She says that he believes that he has to hide relationships from her in the way he hid relationships from Miss Reed.
Okay. And now we're in October of 2007, so they've had their official breakup in June, right?
Yes.
but have, in your review of the conversations that they have and the contact they have, does it appear like they're still having a relationship?
Yes, it does.
Okay. And what does Miss Arias think about being compared to Miss Reed?
She thinks it's ridiculous that
Okay.
she's not like Miss Reed, and that he's delusional if he thinks that. Actually, on crack is, I think, the wording.
All right. And in your review of her journal entries, you said that Miss Reed was characterized as being jealous.
I believe that's what Miss Arias told me. Jealous, crazy, that she was a crazy,
Okay.
kind of crazy.
All right. And in reviewing the journal entries, did you see any notions of jealousy coming from Jodi?
No, I didn't.
And did you see notions of jealousy coming from Mr. Alexander?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And have we talked about some of those issues already?
Yes, we have. We've talked about them.
All right. Let's talk about just a few days later. Actually, just the next day on October 7th. Are you aware, do you remember reading a journal article where, and I believe it's actually in the same exhibit, where she talks about motherhood?
Yes.
And what is the context, or what is your impression of her thoughts and feelings about motherhood?
She is attending a talk on motherhood, and she's talking about the importance for her of being the matriarch in a family, of being a good mother, of being a good wife, and that this was a really, this was at the forefront of what she wanted in her life, to be a mother and a wife, and to be a spiritual matriarch in the family.
All right. And in speaking with Miss Arias, is this something that, was she starting to feel like she wasn't going to get this from Mr. Alexander?
Yes, she was feeling that way.
Okay, and so by October of 2007, do we have her starting to feel like the relationship with Mr. Alexander is not going to end up in marriage?
Well, that's back and forth, because although she says that, the behavior lends me to believe that there's still hope that that could happen.
All right. So is she going through this learned hopefulness?
I believe she is, yes.
All right. So is she still, when you talk about this back and forth behavior, is that something that you see in your practice, this back and forth behavior between feeling like, okay, it can work, and then, oh, and it's not going to work?
Absolutely. It's very common.
All right. Let's talk about October 13th, journal entry on October 13th, and this has been marked as Exhibit 577. And I believe around this time, are you aware of them taking a trip?
Yes.
All right. Do you need to review that?
I'm not reviewing the entire email, but I know the gist of the email.
And when you say email, do you mean journal entry?
I'm sorry, the journal.
Okay. All right. So where is it that they go on a trip in October?
They go to a balloon festival in Albuquerque.
All right. And during this time, are you aware that whether or not Mr. Alexander is still dating Lisa Andrews?
I believe he is still dating.
Based on your information that you reviewed in the case, do you have the understanding that they were still dating?
I do.
Okay. And yet it's Mr. Alexander who takes Jodi with him to this balloon festival, right?
Yes.
And we talked earlier about when they go on trips together and how it's very bonding for them. Do you see that type of bonding going on with this trip?
Yes. There's talk about trying new foods, trying alligator. I forget what else they're trying. Frog's legs. They're trying new food, and that it's a good trip.
All right. is this, you talked earlier about, I think it's called variable interval reinforcement?
Yes,
Is this something that you see here?
yes.
Okay, why?
Because you never know when the good things are going to happen, but they happen and they're good things. And so there's something to look forward to. There's something to believe. If I stick with this, you know, I can have what I want. I can eventually have what I want. And so when you bond, when you take these trips and when you share special things, and I think they do, I think in this relationship they do share special things. I think that's what keeps people in a relationship, is that they share special things, and those things are hard to give up.
All right, and is this one of those special times that you see based on her journal entries?
Yes,
And in speaking with her as well, right?
yes,
Okay. As part of your review, you also talked about other emails between Lisa Andrews and Mr. Alexander?
yes,
And did you review one in October where Mr. Alexander is reassuring Lisa that issues have been dealt with?
yes.
Tell us about that.
I don't remember the exact date, but I remember that
Approach, please.
You may continue.
Okay, so with regard to this email, not talking about the specifics of it, but in this email from Mr. Alexander to Miss Andrews, do you see him reassuring her that everything is okay?
Yes, and that he's dealt with Jodi. He's dealt with the Jodi issue.
Sustained.
Okay.
The jury is directed to disregard the last response. It is stricken from the record.
Okay. So in other words, so is he, do you see this, have you seen Mr. Alexander doing such a thing before in other relationships or with other women, this reassuring? When somebody's upset or somebody's suspicious of his actions, do you see him doing this reassuring?
Just like a foundation, date and time, women.
Yes or no?
Yes,
Okay. And so is this one more time that you see it?
yes.
Okay. What about this incident is important to you?
That shortly after they come back from a trip, Mr. Alexander and Jodi Arias come back from this trip where they've had a really good time and they've bonded with each other, that he is reaffirming a relationship with another woman and saying that he's dealt with the Jodi issue. I'm sorry.
Not that part.
Okay. And that basically the one woman has nothing to worry about.
Do you find this to be deceptive at all?
I find it to be very deceptive.
And what about manipulative?
Well, it's manipulative in that when you lie to somebody who cares about you and they believe you, it reinforces them to believe what you say.
And do you see this happening and to reinforce the relationship so that the woman stays?
Excuse me?
Do you see this happening so that it reinforces the relationship so that the woman stays in the relationship?
Yes, yes. Our minds don't tend to go where our minds haven't been. So if we are not people who generally lie, we generally believe people tell the truth. And so when someone we love and trust tells us something, we tend to believe it unless we are also tend to lie about things.
Okay. All right. Let's talk about at the end of October. I believe that is, let's see, towards the end of October, do we see the first incident of physical violence?
Yes, we do.
All right. And did you speak with Miss Arias about this?
Yes, I did.
All right. Can you tell us about what happens?
There's an argument about everything, about clothes, about how Miss Arias dresses, about her friendships, about her jobs. And there's Mr. Alexander grabs her by the shoulders and shakes her. She wants to leave. He says, "You're not leaving." He pushes her. She falls to her knees. And he berates her in a verbal way as well. And this goes on for a while. They continue to talk after this, and the relationship, I mean, there's...
They continue
sort
to
of,
talk till it calms down?
yes.
Okay. And this happens over a period of a couple hours?
Yes.
One of the things that Miss Arias specifically recalled with regard to this argument had to do with her family. Do you remember that?
That according to Miss Arias, that Mr. Alexander called her family names, called her grandfather, that she was talking about her brother, and his name was Carl, and basically said that was a gay name. And she said, "Well, it's my grandfather's name." And he said he was probably a fag too, and that there was the putting down of her family.
Is that significant to you?
Yes, it's significant, first of all, that somebody calls names to somebody's family, and that he calls them gay names. I mean, I'm not sure why that was, but the putting down of somebody's family is significant. Putting down of people that you care about is significant.
All right. And what about her not being able to leave? What does she say about that?
Well, in Dr. DeMarthe's report, she says she could have left. But initially, he tells her he can't leave, or that she can't leave. And I don't know that she really tried to leave. She stayed. He was escalating. He was yelling at her. And she stayed and calmed him down.
Now, is that something
Then she got to leave.
Okay, after she calmed him down.
Right.
This fighting and this berating that goes on, and then she stays and ultimately stays till he calms down. Is this a cycle, or is this a pattern that you see in relationships in your own with your own patients?
Yes, it is.
Tell me about that.
Well, the pattern being that they have some kind of intense exchange that could be verbal, it could be psychological, it could be physical, it could be all of the above, and that after that happens, there's this quiet period. There's usually a period where people make up. It's called the loving respite. Lenore Walker calls it the honeymoon phase, where they bond again. Because and this happens in arguments with folks that aren't abusive. Usually, if you have an argument with somebody you love, and you make up, you feel closer to that person because you've gone through something together, and you've found a way to patch it up, and so you make up. In a domestically abusive relationship, it's even more intense because the event tends to be more intense.
The event, the tension part, you mean?
The incident.
The incident tends to be more intense.
Yeah.
All right, and in this particular incident, he actually pushes her down. Is that
Yes.
part of the physical violence of it?
Yes.
And we talked earlier about how sometimes women in these relationships don't feel like they have a choice. We talked about the power differential. I think we were talking about the Diamondbacks game, and it doesn't feel like a choice to make a choice, I guess. Is that something similar to this situation where ultimately she tried to fight her way out? Maybe she could have gotten out versus feeling like she didn't have a choice to leave with someone like that?
It could be a situation like that. I mean, when someone physically restrains you, you usually don't have much of a choice. So it's not just a matter of feeling like you don't have a choice. It's more a reality that you don't have a choice. And at some point, she may have had a choice, and she didn't act out on that choice.
And when somebody physically restrains you or is physically violent with you, do people tend to fear that if you do something that the person doesn't like, they might do it right again?
Yes.
Does Miss Arias tend to think that this might have been when it happens in October of 2007, does Miss Arias tend to think that this is an isolated incident?
Yes, she says that it's an isolated instance.
Okay. What does that mean to you?
Well, in terms of the physical encounter, it's the first one. So she sees this as aberrant, as unusual, as not something that typifies the relationship. The verbal things, those are things that she's described as becoming more common and becoming things she expects. But the physical was not something she expected and saw it as an unusual act and maybe didn't even see that it would happen again, probably didn't see that it would happen again. And Mr. Alexander may not have seen that it would happen again either.
All right. And is that part of the hope that the ability on Mr. Alexander's part to hope that he doesn't do something like this again, and the ability to hope by Miss Arias that he's not going to do it again?
Yes.
All right. And all right, let's talk about a journal entry in October 26, 2007. And is it your understanding that this journal entry is after this physical incident?
Yes.
Okay. This has been marked as Exhibit 578. All right, do you remember reviewing this email, or sorry, this journal entry prior to today?
Yes, I did.
Okay, and what is the context? What is it that you get out of this, your impressions of this journal entry?
That Jodi is thinking that she may be starting to get over Mr. Alexander, that she thinks she may have learned something, that she's kind of quick to fall in love and slow to fall out of love, but because of the way he treats her, because of the things he says and does, that she believes she's starting to lose attraction for him.
Okay, so in October of 2007, do you start to see this, an inkling, I guess you'd say, of her starting to pull away?
An inkling. An inkling is where she's actually starting to say to herself, I'm starting to get over him and it's about time.
Okay. And at the end of the journal entry, does she talk about who she's become?
She talks about becoming a shadow of what she once was, that she saw herself as a much healthier, much more directed person. She doesn't say those words, but that she indicates now that she's not what she used to be and she's a shadow of what she once was, less than she once was.
All right. And based on the timing of this journal entry, is this about a little over a year into their relationship?
Yes, it is.
All right. Thank you. Probably good.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, tomorrow morning, 9:30 a.m., please remember the admonition. Have a nice evening. You are excused. Record will show the jury's left the courtroom. Counsel, anything else for this evening? We are at recess. Let me step down.